Michael, they say, we didn't want to mess with the original. This is the hands-on experience of Metal Gear Solid 3's remake with Jordan Miller over at VGC. Nice to hear they don't want to mess with the original source. Those were the thoughts shared in unison between VGC and Giant Bomb's Rocket after we locked eyes following 90 minutes of the Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater. Dude, nicely done. The remake, which brings Hideo Kojima's seminal PS2 stealth title into 2024, aims to not only remake a classic, but also revitalize a franchise that's faced choppy water since its creators departed under murky circumstances, to say the least. Quote, "This is one of my favorite titles as well, and since the game was originally already good to begin with, we didn't want to mess around with the original creative direction of the game," end quote, says Nariaki Okamura, a Konami veteran who serves the remake's producer. The game is very graphically impressive from the second we got our hands on it. The jungle is far denser, and the increased complexity in geometry means that the very clearly defined limits of the level are less obvious. Quote, "This is a 20-year-old game," end quote, says Okamura. Quote, "So when we decided to bring it to modern platforms, we didn't want to make it feel like an old game. We did refine a lot of things to make sure that those who didn't play the original, it still feels like a game that came out in this day and age," end quote. Dude, it's the modern scheme of controls that need to be updated probably the most, right? The new control scheme, like I said right there, is the biggest reflection of this modernization. The game's now controls, like the Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain. Snake's range of movement is much larger. The speed in which you're able to switch through weapons and items is much faster, and as a whole, the game is far more enjoyable to play. Quote, "We are well aware that some of the expressions may have been outdated." He's talking about some of the content from the original game that doesn't meet today's standards as far as sexuality, racial comments, things that you just don't really see today. However, this is where Okamura stands. Quote, "We have a content warning, however. We left the content in out of respect of maintaining the original creator's vision that he had for the game. That was an executive decision to leave it in. There are parts that have been modernized and players are vastly different than we were 20 years ago. So there are definitely some tweaks, but in terms of the story and plotline, we left them as is," end quote. So yeah, you know, some of the stuff we used to see way back when, well, they're still there within the game, but there's a warning. So just be mindful of that. Quote, "The popularity fluctuates over time. We haven't released anything in a while," end quote, reflects Okamura. No kidding. Quote, "Our focus right now is to rebuild the creative team. We have some of the core members of the original team, but right now, our focus is making sure we can deliver the Metal Gear series in this day and age. If that takes off, hopefully we can do more with it," end quote. I like that right there. And now we have a Metal Gear Solid game to be excited about. Sure, it's not a new entry, but if the rest of Delta is any good as the section we played, a Metal Gear Solid 6 becomes a far more reasonable conversation to have. Michael, where do you stand?
This, I think, is if you're a fan of any old game being remastered, is exactly what you want to hear, right? Anytime you get a remaster, there's always sort of that clench where you're like, okay, what are they going to change? Are they going to change core gameplay? Are they going to change the story? What are they going to change? So the fact that, at least for Metal Gear Solid 3, they're saying, look, we're going to keep everything the same. You got to appreciate, look, we're going to put a content warning in. Times have changed. We can all accept that, but we want to leave it the same. I think this is exactly what you want. Of course, at the end of the day, I think I'd probably prefer a new one. I think anytime you can get a new game, there's going to be stuff that you can update, right? And it's no hatred on Metal Gear Solid 3. It's just like, new games are 99% of the time better than remasters. You want new content. If this is a game you played already growing up, I never was really big on the Metal Gear Solid franchise, so going back, I'd rather have a new game to suck me in than an old game where someone's like, oh, you missed out, let me show you how to do this, and then they end up just playing the whole game for you. So that's kind of where I am, but I love the fact they said, look, we want to stay true to the source. I can respect that, and that's how I hope any remaster game in this day and age comes out, because I think that is what everybody wants when they say this game needs to be remastered.
No, absolutely. Metal Gear Solid 3 is one of my favorite games of all time. Like, it's actually tattooed on my arm. So that's how far I love this series, right? This is one of the reasons why I'm in this industry to start with. So for me, Metal Gear has always been near and dear to my heart. So when they said and announced that they're coming back with the remake of 3, I was like, wow, here we go. We know, obviously, the fallout between Kojima and Konami. That seems to be somewhat patched up, as even Kojima now is posting like Metal Gear Solid stuff. So I found very interesting, and we'll see. We'll keep following. Obviously, dude, the game looks incredible. I think visually it looks stunning. This is probably the best way. If you go in chronological order, this is where it all starts. So they're starting at 3, and then I wonder if they move into 1, 2. Like, will the remakes continue until we finally reach a 6, or is there going to become a point in time where they go, nah, you know what? We've done this. We've got your fan base in there now. Let's give you 6. And then they come back with a remake. I don't know how they're going to do it exactly. Very curious to see what they do and pay attention. But I do appreciate the fact that they're tweaking to make it modernized, right? The control scheme is one of the biggest things for me. We're in a different age now from 20 years ago when we played this game. So to have that more of a comfortable control scheme makes total sense. But dude, sneaking around has always been my thing. And now we're in the grass with camouflage, and you can pop on the camouflage, change it out on the fly. Go read Jordan's article. He dives into a lot more of that detail stuff, and it is fantastic to see that they're paying attention to the source. I am pumped for this game. It's supposed to be this year. We have yet to see a release date, which makes me go, I don't think we're getting it until 2025. But we want to hear from you. Hit us up, itgtv.com.